You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. And you know what time it is. It's sadness time. It's sadness time. It's time to talk about all of the misery of the earth, which is happening right here in Tennessee, because last night in Neyland Stadium, Appalachian State almost ruined everyone's evening. Yeah, almost. And you know what? They should have done it. They let the Tennessee Volunteers off the hook because their own coach is overly conservative. But when you're the FCS school playing the FBS school, it makes sense that you would be conservative. It makes sense that you would run the ball often once you have a gigantic lead. All of that stuff makes sense. And when we've seen it from Butch Jones in the past, it hasn't made sense. So it's interesting to be on the other side of that. A team has you dead to rights, ought to beat you, and then they don't beat you. But what differs from this is last year's Tennessee team was better than that Florida team, and they lost the game. But they both play in the same conference. Appalachian State is an FCS school, man. And there's a lot to go into in this game, and I'm going to, do this every week whenever the Vols play. We're going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of the game. And boy, there's a lot of bad and ugly, so we can get into all of that. Also, the Mocs played last night. I failed to mention that on my own show. The Mocs played last night, and they were magnificent. They came out, they handled business, they beat the Shorter Hawks 66-0. They scored on almost all of their drives in the first half, 7 of 8 of them, I believe. I mean, they were almost perfect. There's not too much to say about the Mocs. They basically did what it was that they needed to do and handled their business entirely. Where it gets really, really weird is when you look over to the Tennessee game. If I told you before the game last night which one of these scores were going to wind up 66-0, UTC versus Shorter or Tennessee versus Appalachian State, and which of these games was going to be a 20-13 win. Part of it is that we don't watch enough of the FCS schools, so we're not I'm not familiar with Shorter. I didn't know the talent gap between UTC and Shorter. I have no idea what that is until last night when it happened. But if you had told me which one of these schools is going to win 20-13 and which one of these games is going to end up with the score of 66-0, I would have told you that the Vols would have ended up with the 66-0 score. And what we ended up seeing last night was the Tennessee Volunteers team that was completely unprepared to play the team that they were playing. And they weren't just unprepared on one level, right? Like, it wasn't a quarterback thing. It wasn't a coaching thing. It was all of it. It was all of it. It was quarterback, it was coach, it was receivers, it was running backs. The only part of the team that really showed up was the defense, and even the defense bent way too early in the game and ended up giving up that touchdown. But you can allow that, because if the Vols handle their business offensively, ultimately the defense only gave up 13 points. If they beat them 45-13, that's a score that makes sense. Beating them 20-13, that score does not make any sense when you consider who it is that they're playing and what the expectations that we had were for the Vols this season. They were pretty heavy expectations, and it was a team that deserved those expectations. When you have a coach, he's been in the SEC a long enough time that he's got to get what this is. You've got a quarterback. He is the most seasoned quarterback in the entire league, and you're looking at him, and he's not able to throw balls at an intermediate to deep level at a rate that's acceptable. But we'll get into all of that. But let me talk to you really quickly about where you can reach us online. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make sure to search Hot News Talk Radio and check us out. Also, check us out on our website, hotnewstalkradio.com and Noogaradio.com. That's Noogaradio.com. And also check us out in the TuneIn Radio app, which is free in your favorite app store on whatever mobile device that you use. Simply search Hot News Talk Radio in the app, give us a favorite, press play, and you'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. Again, that's the TuneIn Radio app. Listen like you mean it. So Okay, let's go to the good really quick because there's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot. The good of this game, the Vols got the win. So your season's not over. Your season nearly ended. You were on the wrong end of 13-3 going into halftime. So the good news, your season's not over, right? Like if you come out here and live up to the expectations for the rest of the season, you know what? I'm going to back off of this, but the hype train, we crashed the train. We crashed the train. The train is no longer moving forward. I was not necessarily the conductor on said hype train. However, I was in the front of the train. I was first class in the Tennessee Volunteers hype train to the point where I'm not going to let one game back me off my point. I'm not going to let one game do that. But I'm really close. I'm really close to letting one game back me off my point because of how badly that one game got played. The other good thing in this game, there's only two good things. One, the W. You'll take the win. The second good thing about this game, outside of giving up that initial touchdown, the defense did a fantastic job at standing up at key moments in the game and slowing Appalachian State down or stopping them entirely. Never let them get into field goal range. They gave up the one field goal early on, or not the field goal. They almost gave up one field goal, the 42-yarder that they were close enough that they thought they were good enough to try, which we'll get into that in a second because that helped in part to bail out Tennessee. Just some weird coaching from Appalachian State. But the defense stood up. The defense made the stops that they had to make. They made it difficult for them to pass. They got after it. They were able to get big sacks in big moments of the game, especially when the game started to get on the line at the end of the third and fourth quarters, and even in that overtime where they were able to slow Appalachian State down entirely and just stand up and stop them from getting anywhere near the end zone. That was something that was huge. Derek Barnett is a bona fide monster, and I enjoyed watching Tennessee's defense out there getting after it. They did what they were supposed to do against the school that they were playing. Did they give up 2 touchdowns? Yes, they did. But you know what? It's not like they were playing a bunch of scrubs. They weren't playing a bunch of scrubs. So you're going to give up a couple of touchdowns. It's unacceptable to just score 2 touchdowns in 4 quarters of play in an overtime if you're Tennessee, being from the SEC, playing Appalachian State of the Sun Belt. That's unacceptable. But what the defense giving up to? Not really. I'm a little upset at how it happened. It happened so early in the game. I actually tuned into the game a little bit late because I was still on the air yesterday. So I didn't get to tune into the game and really see it until I was in the second quarter when I jumped in, and they were already down 7-3. And then they gave up that other touchdown in the second quarter. And that's around when I tuned in. So I'm a little mad at how fast it happened, but it's good. That kind of thing's going to happen. But the defense overall, I was impressed with. They got stronger as the game went on. Now for the bad. And there's a whole lot of bad. There's also a whole lot of ugly, but there's a whole lot of bad, right? Here's some of the bad. The bad, the coaching is still too conservative. And I spent an entire summer complaining about this under some weird belief that they were going to change that you're going to get more aggressive with some of these play calls. You cannot be this conservative. And I understand a little bit that had to do with Josh Dobbs. He was not playing particularly well last night, especially when it came to throwing the ball. And I think Saturday Down South had a great blog post about it that pretty much sums it all up, which is that, sorry, Tennessee fans, new Josh Dobbs looks exactly like old Josh Dobbs. You remember hearing that this whole summer about how, we got a brand new Josh Dobbs. He's going to throw the ball down the field. He's going to connect with targets. We're going to score long touchdowns. Yeah, no, that didn't happen last night. We had one. Josh Dobbs did not play well last night. And that's fine, but the coaching staff seemed to give up on him almost immediately. Like, he just didn't throw the ball well early in the game, and they were like, yeah, no, he can't throw. We're done. We're done with him. He can't do this. And they wouldn't go deep. In fact, I wouldn't even say they wouldn't go deep. There were not even intermediate passes in the game. Josh Dobbs completed 16 passes. Okay, less than 50%, by the way. Or a little over 50%, rather. It was 16 of 29. He completes 16 passes. 12 of those passes are inside of 10 yards. So the bulk of them are inside of 10 yards. He only completes 3 that were inside the range of 10 to 30 yards, and he only attempted 7. He only attempted 7 intermediate passes. It's not like the guy was playing well. So I can understand that the coaching staff gets a little scared and a little wary, but you've been watching this guy practice all off season long, okay? The moment guys showed up for training camp, you got a chance to take a look at him. Did you see something in the game that you just didn't see in practice? Did he lead you to believe that he was suddenly going to start throwing it down the field more accurately in practice? Because the way they shied away from him, they just didn't believe in him. And I think that that's a little unfair, especially when they started to have to throw the ball a little bit more later on and take some of those deep shots. You ended up being rewarded with like a 67-yard touchdown or something like that to Malone. Like, either Josh Dobbs can't take the shots, in which case pull him out of the game because you need to take shots downfield, or he can't take shots, in which case let him throw. Okay, Tennessee's got like 4 plays that they run that I've noticed. It's a run to the right, it's a run to the left, it's a run up the middle, and it's a play action fake off of one of the runs. That's 4 plays. They've got 4 plays that they run. That's the bad in the game. The coaching, both sides, right? Because Appalachian State almost gave the game back. They had a lead, and they gave the game away. This is what happened in the game, right? You are Appalachian State. Okay, you're on Tennessee's 30-yard line after the Tennessee touchdown. After the returning punt is returned 45 yards, you're on Tennessee's 30. And you've got an opportunity to take the game back under your control. You've got fantastic field position. Sure, Tennessee scored. You still have the momentum. And these are the next 3 plays that you run. And I love the way that Jordan Sargent writes this on Deadspin.com. These are the next 3 plays that you run. A run up the middle for a loss of 3 yards. A run up the middle for a gain of 8 yards. A run up the middle for a loss of 2 yards. You punt. I'm not sure Appalachian State wanted to win the game. I know the players did. But that's an interesting coaching decision to make there. Did Coach Satterfield want to win the game? And then, when they're in striking distance and they've got an opportunity to make a field goal kick that is really going to hurt Tennessee, Tennessee's going to have to try and win this game. They mismanage the time. They don't use their timeouts to try and pick up a first down. And this is what happens. He calls on Michael Rubino, who I won't beat up on too much in this show because he's a freshman. He's a freshman kicker. If you don't expect freshman kickers to struggle, you're insane. He's a freshman. Okay, that's part of the struggle. I'm sure Michael Rubino is going to turn out to be a fine kicker. Just today wasn't his day. It was his first ever game. It was his debut as a freshman kicker in a high-pressure situation, and he missed an extra point, and he was called upon later to kick a field goal, a 42-yarder, which he pushed to the far right. Then the Mountaineers get the ball again later. 2.5 minutes left on their own 20. And he wanted them Coach Satterfield wanted them to move up the field slowly. So he called another run up the middle. And they ran the clock down between snaps. And they got some passes. And they started to get into the zone. And they were on the Vols 37. And the clock was bleeding out. And they had a timeout. And they didn't use it. And then they brought on the kicking unit. But then they decided to snap the ball instead of bringing on the kicking unit. And then that ended up with quarterback Taylor Lamb running around, and then he tried to get out of bounds before the game expired, but of course he couldn't because he wasn't given much time. It was just a mess. That's part of the bad. Coaching, both sides, too conservative. Makes sense for Satterfield, but he mismanaged the game at the end. Doesn't make sense for Butch Jones. He got bailed out by Satterfield. Just really completely honest with you. That's some of the bad. And it was ridiculously bad. Doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense. And now we can finally move on to the ugly of this game, as though what we saw was not bad enough. And I really didn't even want to use the good, bad, and ugly setup, except there was so much stuff in this game beyond what you could consider bad. And we can go to Josh Dobbs for some of the ugly. I talked a little bit about how he didn't play well, and that affected the calls that the coaching made. But it's all connected. It's a three-way connection. The coaches didn't help Josh Dobbs out. Like, what if they had taken some shots down the field and he had connected? And you've got some momentum and you're rolling forward. That's some of the ugly. The coaches didn't make great decisions there, right? But Josh Dobbs was just not throwing the ball well. I was talking about how poorly he played on intermediate throws. Yeah, the deep throws, which are 30 yards and longer, Tennessee didn't do a great job of that last year, of having those big plays. And if Josh Dobbs isn't going to throw the ball down the field, they're still going to have trouble with that. He was 1 of 2 on 30-plus type plays, one of which was the interception before halftime, where they just started feeling the pressure, and he just flung it downfield in what was easily the most hideous throw of the night and might be one of the ugliest throws of the entire college football season, but we'll see. Threw it across his body, off his back foot, running away from his receiver. How that was going to be anything but intercepted was beyond me. And then he completed the other throw for a touchdown, which just, after running like 6 straight running plays and then throwing the deep ball, makes you wonder why we didn't just throw more deep balls. But nevertheless, it was just that kind of night, and it was an ugly night for Josh Dobbs, but it was also an ugly night for the offensive line. And part of the reason why Josh Dobbs played so poorly was that the offensive line was horrendous. They were dreadful. I mean, I've seen sieves with more containment than that offensive line. I've seen turnstiles with more containment than that offensive line. Tennessee's offensive line wasn't going to stop a thing. Part of it was that each guy on that offensive line, I don't know what it is that they feed those guys over in Appalachian State, but that offensive line outweighed each Tennessee player by like 50 pounds. I don't know if you saw that in the lineup. Those guys were outweighed by like 50 pounds a man. So there's the obvious weight issue, but then there was just a technique thing too. Josh Dobbs was just running for his life the entire night. At no point did he seem comfortable in the pocket. And part of that, too, is he could have stayed in there and made some plays, right? He could have made the defense pay a little bit. There was some coverage sacks, and then you look at the replay and go, but he's got a guy open. So how is that a coverage sack? He just didn't see him. But regardless, the offensive line was bad. When he could have settled down and made some throws, there were guys in his face. He was wearing Appalachian State closer than his own jersey at points in the game. Like, there was just no help from anywhere. And I'm going to open up the Hot News Hotline. You can call in 800-8949-800-8949. Tell me what you think, because I want to know what you think of the good, bad, and ugly of the game. Josh Dobbs had no protection last night. And not only was the offensive line bad for pass protection, they were horrible in run protection too. They averaged 3 yards a carry last night. Josh Dobbs had -4 rushing for the first time ever This is the first time he's ever had negative yardage rushing in a game. First time ever. You know, and he's a senior. This is the first time he's ever had negative yardage rushing. I don't understand how they could be that bad last night. And hopefully they don't look that bad later on. But, like, Alabama's bigger than Appalachian State. What are you going to do against Bama? What are you going to do against A&M? We're going to talk a little bit about Colin Kaepernick some more. Just a little bit. The story continues to develop somewhat. And last night's start to the college football season for Vols fans was a shock. What could other teams in the SEC do to surprise us that much? Next on Clutch with Keon Rose on Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Wars come and go, but my soldiers stay eternal.
Now you can listen to Hot News Talk Radio anywhere, streaming live at Noogaradio.com. That's Noogaradio.com.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is Mike at Wholesale Liquidation, Highway 58, next to Taco Bell, featuring over 6,000 square feet of unique and everyday wholesale items, discounted to, get this, 50 to 75% off of retail, from new and pre-owned tools to chainsaws and auto accessories. Wholesale Liquidation, Highway 58, next to Taco Bell.
Rumble in today to Diesel Off-Road Tech for a free diesel engine diagnostic to see what's holding you back. Your 4x4 is gasping like an old lady. It's hesitating. How can you possibly be the man you want to be? Diesel Off-Road is ready for you. 8 bays, 8 techs, plug in, get the $100 diagnostic of your major machine now. A bumper-to-bumper analysis with factory software tools. Free if you mention Cowherd or Hannity. Absolutely no charge. Want to bring a new look or better mileage to your truck or 4x4 off-road vehicle? Diesel Off-Road in Sunny Daisy is the four-wheel specialist. Lift kits, customizing, all wheels, all tires, performance boosts, repair. Call 805-2800. Diesel's mechanics and techs have 100 years combined experience making engines roar and exteriors sparkle. DieselOffroadTech.com. Call 805-2800.
This is Mike at For the Record at Northgate Mall. We're the largest complete record store in town. We sell old and new vinyl records, celebrity posters, music posters, and we are the largest in town. Come see us.
Expect partly cloudy skies through the nighttime. Overnight lows 68 to 70. For Friday, a few high clouds will pass through, becoming breezy but less humid. Highs mid and upper 80s with more sunshine. Very nice weather for the Labor Day holiday weekend. Highs 88 to 90. Lows lower to middle 60s. If you're human, chances are you love cheese, but chances are you've never had a burrito wrapped around melted cheese. It's the best thing since sliced cheese. New cheesy core burritos only at Taco Bell. And I'm Storm Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Hot News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. One roadblock in the Chattanooga area on Highway 41 near Raccoon Mountain. That's only going to be operated on Friday night. Just one roadblock in Chattanooga. In Sunny Daisy, there will be no roadblocks. However, they will be doing saturation patrols, as the police call it, to ensure that drunk drivers are not driving around the areas, and they will be pulling people over if they appear to be intoxicated or speeding. Same goes for Red Bank, although Red Bank has been coy about whether or not there will be roadblocks. We do know that in Red Bank there will be saturation patrols in the area. However, Red Bank has not said whether or not there would be roadblocks in Red Bank, and the police force there has not said where the roadblocks would be if there are any. Chattanooga has been similarly coy with the Tennessee Highway Patrol about its location specifically of the roadblock. We can tell you that it is on Highway 41 on Friday near Raccoon Mountain. That's your update on the roadblocks from us here, Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
So, Brock Turner, the Stanford swimmer that was accused and convicted of sexual assault, has been released from prison after serving half of his sentence. Half. 3 months. He's sentenced to 6 months because the judge, Aaron Penske, didn't think that something like this should ruin his life. He didn't think that something like that should ruin his life. First off, then why do you send people to prison? Like, what is the point? If committing a crime is not supposed to ruin your life, at least at some level, then what do you send people to prison for? Is it rehabilitation? I guess I get caught up and confused with the idea that somehow sending people to prison is for rehabilitation if you're going to make it so difficult for someone to get a job after going to jail. It can't possibly be for rehab. If you send someone to jail and then set up a scenario and set up situations whereby going to jail makes it easier to go back to jail. You can't get a job if you're a convicted felon. You can't, it's hard to find work. It's hard to do anything. There's some loans you can't have and take out, which means, you're not getting a car probably anytime soon. I mean, having something ruin your life, that's what we consider jail to be. Jail is a deterrent. It's going to ruin your life. Don't go to that place. Don't get yourself in a position where you're going to jail. The purpose of jail is to ruin your life. I mean, we use jail more as a deterrent than as rehab. Like, jail does not rehabilitate people. Okay, it just doesn't. If you somehow find rehabilitation in jail, it's usually not because of the jail. Typically, I mean, it's hard. Like, when you look at what jail is, I don't buy it. He didn't want to ruin his life. So we're treating somebody specially because, like, if you don't want to ruin his life, then what are you doing to all these other people who get arrested? Like, what about all these other people who get arrested for sexual assault and have to serve longer than 6 months and get out certainly much later than 3? What are we doing to all those people? Or people that are convicted of selling drugs or breaking and entering and all of those things? Like, what are you doing to those people? What is a crime worth, quote unquote, ruining somebody's life over? I just find that whole concept to be bizarre. And then on top of that, because I was listening to the CBS News that we have at the top of every hour, they were talking about how he was being taken to be registered as a sex offender. And that completely blew my mind, because not the fact that he's being registered as a sex offender, that's not mind-blowing at all. But if the judge sentencing him to only 3 or 6 months in prison because he didn't want to ruin his life and he only gets out after 3, but then he's going to be registered as a sex offender, you realize that being registered as a sex offender is possibly one of the worst things that could ever happen to you. If your goal was not to ruin his life, what on earth is that? Registering somebody as a sex offender, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean that you've done something terrible. Even acts done as a child can get you registered as a sex offender. As the case of one young woman who was involved in inappropriate behavior with her little brother can attest, but they were both minors at the time. They were both under the age of 10. Like, they didn't know what they were doing. And she got registered as a sex offender. Now she can't get a job anywhere. If the purpose of these things is not to ruin somebody's life, can somebody explain to me the whole sex offender thing? Because that definitely does ruin your life. And it doesn't make you not a sex offender anymore. Like, it doesn't make you less of somebody who is likely to be a sex offender. It just means that whatever you do that vaguely falls into and under the definition of sex offender is essentially someone who can't get a job. You can't live anywhere near children, even if, for instance, this guy, Brock Turner, his sexual assault was not against a minor. He can't be anywhere near children, which is weird because he can still be around grown women. Like, he could still go to parties or whatever and still do the same thing. His excuse was that he's drunk. Well, he can still drink. So, I mean, what does this prevent besides just the ruining of his life? The whole sex offender being registered for a sex offender thing, like, I almost have more of a problem with that. I think he should have spent more time in jail. If jail is supposed to do what we think jail is supposed to do, which is rehabilitate criminals so that when they come out, they are no longer criminals. But our jails don't do that. Not actually. So I just wanted to bring that up there on a soapbox of sorts, because it's interesting. I think that's odd. Our goal is to rehab, but we never use our jails that way. Just something to think about. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That is I want to talk a little bit more about Colin Kaepernick really quickly, as though that story has not been completely beaten into the ground and you're not tired of hearing it already. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, because I think that we're near the end of that particular cycle of the story. But someone was talking about earlier today about Colin Kaepernick's maturity, that the whole thing with the police pig socks, he actually wore those before he protested, and now he's starting to change up his protest a little bit. He's starting to wear his hair out, which is kind of odd and interesting. But you know, his entire approach to the protest, starting with the police pig socks and sort of culminating in the not standing for the national anthem or the raising of the flag, where, you know, sporting events, as people have said over and over and over again, and I'm certain you've heard by now, are really one of the only places where we do that, where we still take that time to honor the flag and honor the nation. We almost don't do it anywhere else. You know, you say the Pledge of Allegiance if you go to a public school. And then, you know, I lived in Texas. I said the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we said the Texas Pledge of Allegiance. Like, there's two. You say both. But yeah, now you that's like school, public school, and sporting events seem to be the only places where you do that. And I just don't understand. Like, but with Colin Kaepernick is one of those guys. He's decided to make this thing personal. But if you see Colin Kaepernick and his protest as a maturation, as he's learned more about how to protest, he's been protesting a little bit more intelligently each time. And if once you take it that way, because the police pig socks thing, which just made me mad as a person who I'm currently wearing a pair of socks where it looks like they're fish eating my feet. That I like socks. So I understand the whole deal there, but don't go after the entire police department. But he was wearing those socks before the protest, which changes things a little bit, because I thought he was wearing them after it. And I'm looking at the guy and I'm going, what are you, tone deaf? Why is it that you're this non-understanding of the situation you're in? How did you get to be this tone deaf? But the socks were before. So that tells me at least he's learning. Like, the socks aren't going to give you anything. The socks aren't going to give you anything, right? But as he's learned, as he's gathered more information, his protests have become a little bit more intelligent. But he's got to be more intelligent. He's got to be smarter about how he talks about this, because he's not been doing a great job of explaining what all this stuff is. He's willing to start the protest, but what he's not willing to do is have the conversation properly. And I'm still worried about that what we're doing is we're taking away from the conversation. Still somehow we are constantly talking about Colin Kaepernick. And I just think that's odd. And it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, because I want to have the conversation. Like, that's where the stuff is more fruitful. But we'd rather have this thing about how Colin Kaepernick is un-American. You've got people burning his jersey, which I just think is ridiculous. I mean, if you don't like the guy anymore, just toss the jersey. You don't have to burn it and record it with your webcam. So that what? So that we see what? You know how to start a fire? Congratulations. You passed caveman school. But that goes to show you that the conversation is still not where it ought to be. It's still in a different place, and it's still in a wrong place. And that's all because of how he's protested. And I just think that there's a way to find that you can protest that the conversation stays on what it is that you want to talk about. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Got a little bit of college football action tonight. Michigan State is playing tonight, and they're already up 7-0 in their game, and Baylor is playing Northwestern? They're playing Northwestern. That game just started mere seconds ago. It's over on ESPN if you want to check all of that out. But I'm looking at Tennessee, and Tennessee has done the impossible, and it's not a positive impossible. Tennessee has done the impossible. Tennessee has managed to shock the world by somehow making a victory seem like a loss. The victory feels like a loss. It doesn't feel good. The way that they won that game in overtime with Josh Dobbs fumbling into the end zone and somehow Jalen Hurd recovering it in a game against the school that you can easily see they're more talented than. And in a lot of ways, they won the game because they are more talented. That and Appalachian State gave it back with poor clock management. Tennessee, easily one of the more surprising starts to the college football season. But what other team could shock us? What other games could surprise us like that game was? So I was starting to go down the week one schedule, and I was looking at South Carolina at Vanderbilt, and I was thinking to myself, nah, that game's not going to be surprising. Who's going to win South Carolina and Vanderbilt? Would you be shocked if either team won that game? Like, South Carolina is so far behind the 8 ball. You know, they could win. Vanderbilt's on an upswing. Derek Mason's been a solid coach for them. That defense is rough. I think Vanderbilt's going to win the game, but I don't think there's going to be anything surprising out of that game. The only thing that would be surprising is if one team lopsidedly beat the other. But I don't know what to expect from either of those teams. Not one clue. I wouldn't be shocked either way. So you go down the schedule a little bit more. You've got Missouri at West Virginia. Again, that's another non-shocking game. Like, who's honestly going to be surprised if Missouri beats West Virginia and vice versa? I'm a little worried about West Virginia because Dana Holgorsen is on the hot seat here. He's been a pretty successful coach for that school, but they haven't really done anything. But they score lots of points. They score lots of points, but they don't seem to win. Now, this is probably a hot seat year for Holgorsen. Does West Virginia beat Missouri? I mean, maybe. Missouri hasn't played great, and they've got a lot of changes with their athletic director and their coach and everything else. There's nothing that's going to surprise you there either. Mississippi State versus South Alabama. Mississippi State has got a lot of questions at quarterback now that Dak Prescott is in the NFL. Where do they turn to get that kind of production? How good is the team really if they don't have a Dak Prescott type guy? Because last year, Dak Prescott was the offense. He just was the offense. He was the entire offense. So I'm looking at Mississippi State and going, yeah, if Mississippi State loses to South Alabama, that would be surprising. But if the game is close for no reason, that's not too surprising at all. LSU versus Wisconsin. I think LSU versus Wisconsin could be really surprising because if Wisconsin wins, they're built to beat an SEC school. I don't think they will. I think LSU beats Wisconsin, and pretty bad. I think we're underestimating LSU just a little bit, and I know Brandon Harris is just okay, but I think we're underrating LSU quite a bit. But outside of, losing to Wisconsin, that wouldn't be truly shocking. Like, Tennessee's win was truly shocking last night because it was depressing to watch in their inability to move the ball anywhere. And that's not even to say, by the way, Tennessee fan and anybody else watching, that this season's over. Like I said, I'm not jumping off the bandwagon just yet. I just think this is a Tennessee team. Defense is going to be the thing that wins it. Now, they didn't really get any turnovers last night, but also Appalachian State didn't throw the ball. You didn't have a lot of those times where the ball's in the air and you've got a chance to make a play on it because, they're just not a passing football team, really. They've got a lot of great running backs, and they ran. They ran a lot, and they ran well. So they did what they had to do to win that game, but it's not going to be something that's very easy to do. Tennessee's going to have to win with defense this season. They're going to have to win with defense because the offense isn't going to give them a ton. If Josh Dobbs is out here struggling against Appalachian State in their secondary, and I'm not, disrespecting the team at all, because it is a good football team, but if that's the secondary you're struggling against, I don't know how on earth you ever planned on beating Georgia with Kirby Smart going down there. Like, I don't know how you planned on doing that. I don't know how you planned on winning the East, to be honest with you. UCLA versus Texas A&M. That's a game that, to me, also not going to be filled with a ton of surprises. Again, unless it's a blowout either way. I'm just going down the schedule and going, there's not a ton of games that I would be truly, truly shocked at. Here is something, though, that would surprise me. Georgia versus North Carolina. If North Carolina wins, I would not be shocked because North Carolina football has also been trending upwards. But here's something that also all of the new things that are happening in Georgia. Georgia's just got so many new variables to account for that they could lose to North Carolina, and I wouldn't be surprised. It would be a little surprising. It just wouldn't be very surprising. But what would be surprising is if Grayson Lambert came out and just balled out against North Carolina. If either that happened or if Jacob Eason played, because I suspect, and I have been told this from people who know more about life than I do, that Jacob Eason, there's a good chance that he has some snaps in the game. Probably late in the game just to see what he can do. Just to see what the guy is capable of. And if Jacob Eason shows up and puts on a display, right, just has a great coming out party, and Grayson Lambert struggles, that would be surprising. Also, what would be surprising is if Grayson Lambert said, you know what, this is my starting job, and just rocked it. But what I'm starting to see right now is that quarterbacks that have trouble pushing the ball down the field, like we saw last night, life doesn't get easier for you. It gets harder. And Grayson Lambert, he's not a deep thrower. He's just not. That's not his game. He's a solid short to intermediate passer, but he's not a deep ball guy. So I would be truly surprised on a Tennessee versus Appalachian State level if somehow Grayson Lambert came out, took the starting job by the reins, and was just slinging the rock around all over the place, making this look good. I mean, I would be shocked. That would be the most shocking thing to me. Another thing that I think would be pretty shocking is if UMass beat Florida. That would be surprising. And I understand Florida's got the whole, how good is Luke Del Rio really at quarterback? He better be good enough to help you beat UMass. Massachusetts? Oh, you got to beat that team. You've got to beat that team. If Florida comes out and struggles against UMass the way that Tennessee struggled against Appalachian State, I would be surprised. Because, look, Tennessee got picked to win the East this year, and I told you, everybody that hasn't picked them, you're just being a contrarian. You know that this school is good enough to win that division. But here's the thing. The people that didn't choose Tennessee are choosing only one of two other options, Florida or Georgia. Florida's tough to me as a sell, as is Georgia. I mean, I'm just looking at the talent that they have on both sides of the ball and going, Tennessee's just got the experience, which apparently didn't account for too much last night. But you put them in that game like 9 times out of 10. Does it really look that bad? I just have trouble believing that. That's why I can't jump off the bandwagon with the team. And again, they looked bad last year against Bowling Green. Not this bad, obviously. They still put up 50 against Bowling Green, but they allowed 30. Last year, it was the defense that couldn't get it done. It was the defense that looked porous and weak, and that told us a lot about this college football season. Or last college football season. This year, it's the offense that can't get it done, and that's good. That's telling us a lot, by the way. I don't know that they're necessarily going to be able to score all that easily this season. And it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard, but I expect the defense to be able to step up and really score some points for them. I mean, you're just going to have to. But you're looking at Florida as the other team that a lot of people thought, okay, if it's not Tennessee, if Tennessee's overrated, if Tennessee is not what we think they're going to be, and we're wrong, like Florida's the team that can do it. Florida goes out there and somehow has a similar game against UMass, and I don't know what we're going to do. I think we're just going to watch SEC West games and just ignore the East. Because I don't know what to tell you after that. If Florida can't do it and Tennessee can't do it, and that only leaves us Georgia. And good, we hope that they can do it at that point. But I don't see it with Florida. I just don't see it. But still, I think this is a team that's good enough to beat Massachusetts. And I know right now every Florida fan is like, no, don't pick us. Don't pick us. Everything you pick turns to dust. And I'm sorry, guys. This is the job. This is the job. UMass, that would be a game that if Florida struggled against UMass, I would be shocked, as shocked as I was last night watching Tennessee versus Appalachian State. And if USC beats Alabama, that's another thing that would do it for me. USC is nowhere near as good as Alabama, which is why it's hilarious that they made those Roll Tears Roll shirts. Yeah, your tears. USC, the University of Southern California, to be clear, not South Carolina, they're not as good even remotely as Alabama. This game is going to be a woodshed beating. It's going to be a butt whooping, as we say in Texas. And it's not going to be close. It's going to be a good old-fashioned woodshed beating, the kind of which we don't see very often. I think this game's going to be lopsided and over in a hurry. And Clemson plays Auburn. If Auburn is even in that game, sort of, I'll be shocked. I will be shocked out of my skin if Auburn is in that game remotely. Like they I don't know. Is Shaun White really going to score enough points to hang in there with Deshaun Watson and that high-powered offense in Clemson? I don't think so. And then Ole Miss plays Florida State, and I don't know that there's anything that's really going to surprise me about that game because I have so many question marks about Florida State and their quarterback situation with the injuries and suspensions and everything else. Ole Miss could legitimately beat them. Hugh Freeze is ready to go, and Chad Kelly's such a good quarterback. But Florida State's still Florida State, and a lot of people have them winning the ACC. So that's going to be tough to tell. But there's not going to be a ton of games that have me as shocked as last night. Thank you for listening to Clutch with Keon Rose here on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 71 hours.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm going to be